So after the class, I just want to talk to you about this evaluation, no, for these topics. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll discuss after the class, maybe a couple of
sure,
minutes.
sure, sure.
As I told you, I have already given them group assignment.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that.
They have submitted. And also, I conducted one test also.
Okay.
So they have done well. So,
Yes,
yes, sir.
Teja, please go ahead.
Sir, just a small general inquiry. I mean,
Yes,
general query.
sure, sure.
Is the exams going to be online as of now? Like in January semester 3, what's the plan, sir?
Well, in fact, for the first year student, November 26th exam, no, first semester exam, they are planning to have a physical. That means it will be both combined, I think. The people who are able to come, students who are able to come to the campus, they'll give what you call hard copy exam in the classroom. And those people who are not able to come, probably they may be allowed to give online exam. I think they are trying to implement it from this first semester exam of your juniors, which are starting on 26th of November. So we have to see how it goes. But I'm sure by January, by which time we have the exam, I am fairly confident that there is a good chance that you will have classroom exam also. And of course, they may still give the option those who are not able to come to the campus, they may give them option of online. This is what I understand. Because the examination department will communicate. I think yesterday or today I saw one mail from Stigna madam regarding the exam. So, Bosses sir, incidentally, Stigna has taken over as examination controller, registrar,
Understandable. Okay.
because Rama has left, Rama Devi Mata.
Oh, I see.
So that answers your question, Teja?
Yes, sir. Now I got understand.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we have to wait and watch because they are closely watching the other colleges, the government regulation, notification, local situation, and how many students are. This is a combination of so many factors. But I think the offline exam will start from the first semester exam.
Yes, sir. For juniors, it's gonna be off. I mean, I'm not understanding that part. Like some people will give pen and paper, and some people will give MCQ based.
This is what I presume. Huh? I mean, don't take it from me.
Acha,
The
acha. Okay, sir. I
final
got
word
it.
has to come from the registrar.
Official, sir, I got it. This is a general scenario, but the final
Yeah,
official confirmation had to come.
this is a possibility. This is a
Yes, sir.
possibility. Right. I think, sir, we'll start off the discussion no, so that
Right,
others will
right,
join.
right, right. Okay, go
So, good
ahead.
morning, friends. Welcome to Bowser, sir. Thank you, sir, for again joining us for one more interesting session on robotics and RPA. So, I'm sure we'll get a lot of insights into that. So, in fact, Bowser, sir, has been doing a lot of study and he has been closely monitoring. But we keep having a lot of interaction, discussion, over both online, offline, and of course, last 1.5 years because of the COVID, we are not able to meet physically. But otherwise, also I am in touch with him. And so, just to put it in perspective, all of you must have heard about this Glasgow summit, which is going on in UK. Anybody has heard about it? We'll just spend a couple of minutes on that, and then Bausa sir will start his session. Yes, anybody? Maybe 10 seconds.
Yes, sir, it is related to the climate change conference, right?
Very good, very good, Anshul. I appreciate. Very good. At least one of you are keeping track of it. So a lot of coverage is going on the TV. In fact, I have been closely following this. In fact, Bosses are also it is one of his favorite topics. Yeah, see COPA, COPA 26 they call
Yes,
it.
sir.
Okay. So what is the full form of COPA or COPE, whatever you call that? Anybody? Again, 10 seconds. Otherwise, I'll go ahead. Okay. So basically, this is a conference of partner countries, which happens once in 5 years. The last one was held in 2015 in Paris, and now it is happening in UK. UK is hosting that, and 200 countries are participating. And this time, a lot of young people, young activists from all over the world are assembling there. They are doing everyday seminar, conferences, and whatnot, processions, and all that. And you must have heard about that girl called Thunberg, Swedish girl, hardly I think less than 20. She's a very important activist. She spoke in UNO and all that. So having said that, the challenge is that they say that unless we do something between now and next 1 or 2 decades, the temperature, if it goes beyond 1.5 degrees, is going to cause a lot of problems. Okay? Especially a lot of island countries like Bangladesh, Singapore, Maldives, Seychelles, India, even large coastal areas of India, including Gujarat and South Peninsular India, also will get affected. And there is a danger. There is a place called Sundarbans in West Bengal. It's already half the water, and then countries like Fiji and Togo, many countries in Africa, Asia, everywhere there are problems. So they are trying to work on that. And the Indian Prime Minister has given a huge pledge. Okay. And he said that we'll go neutral by 2070. It is a massive pledge. Some people have said that by 2030, some people said 2060. I think China said 2060. And I think Russia also seems to have said, but China and Russia, they are not participating as usual. And so these are some of the developments. And countries are giving a lot of pledges. 40 countries, they said they'll stop coal projects over the next 4 or 5 years. And I think 10, 15 countries, they have also pledged that they'll not fund any project abroad for the fossil fuels. And in India also, we said by 2030, 50% of the energy will be coming from non-renewable, which means the plan is to have, the target is to have 500 gigawatts of non-renewable energy, which is solar, wind, hydroelectric, including nuclear and other things, which is a massive, massive target. It is very difficult considering our economy and current distribution, transmission setup, and the political situation, because half the state governments are bankrupt, and most of the utilities are having huge arrears. Power companies are having huge arrears, billions of dollars. So a lot of challenges are there. And today morning report, which I sent to you, says that we require investment of almost $100 billion over the next 15, 20 years. I don't know whether we'll be able to give that much investment. So these are the issues. So, Bosses, sir, would you like to add?
Yeah, let me just try to give you 2 minutes more, and then we'll go back to the topic that we have for today. I'll just add points which are missed or they're not spoken by Murthy sir. What he says is all important. This could be a good interview question from the general knowledge point of view. So I'll give you some points which might help you answer that question well. Okay. So one is there are two sides to this whole picture on climate change, global warming, or environment in general. It is called environment protection. My association with this field is because I was managing environment management at one of the big public sector companies, and so I had to do a lot of reading to understand what is the contribution of companies to the environment. And the challenge always used to be, how do you reduce your negative impact on the environment? But for you, what is important to understand is fossil fuels, which generate CO2 and other greenhouse gases, are the biggest culprit that are targeted today. Okay, for the burning of fossil fuels gives rise to greenhouse gases on one hand, and these greenhouse gases form a layer outside the planet, and when this layer is getting thicker and thicker, that leads to reflection of the heat energy from the sun back to the earth. That's what is causing global warming, and global warming is leading to other side effects, the most critical being melting of the polar ice. And the evidence is all there. You can see the amount of ice every if you want, you can see every year, but they have got pictures showing every decade and how it has come down. And when polar ice melts, right, that leads to increase in sea level. So you have on one hand increase in the atmospheric temperature, which in turn leads to melting of more ice, and which in turn leads to rising sea levels. And it also influences the wind patterns across the globe, which is also why you see climate change. That means winters are not starting and ending in the way they used to happen 50 years back or 100 years back. Monsoons are not as intense as they are today. What it was before. And the consequences of very heavy rains. Right now Chennai is going through a little bit of an experience, but the bigger worry is, as Murthy sir said, when there is global warming and when sea levels rises, definitely many island nations, and including some areas like the Bay Area in San Francisco or the Florida. If you can see the map of North America, you'll see these are areas which are jutting into the sea, and these areas are already fighting rising sea levels. Okay, the water is slowly coming into the area which people were living. So that is one of the biggest fears. But the consequences of climate change in terms of landslides or monsoons, this is another area which is known. And not to forget the challenge of poor health, as can be seen in Delhi today. Though Delhi, everything is not because of global warming, there are other additional factors. But across the world, China has faced this problem, UK has faced this problem, Europe has faced this problem. We have faced this in parts, as it is our cities air quality level is much above the danger mark, whether you take it Mumbai or any of the metro cities. And Delhi, right, and Delhi through during winter goes through the worst experience, leading to poor health. These are serious matters. Okay, and that's why this Conference of Parties, COP26, has gained prominence, because now this is affecting across geographical boundaries. One should not forget that. And the sad part is, one of the arguments of some group of people in COP is the developed nations already emitted a lot of CO2, whose price the underdeveloped nations are paying. But this is like the chicken and egg situation. Let's say, even if it is true, now the focus is how do we control this and how do we share the burden. That is where the COP is very, very crucial. They want to share the burden. I think Prime Minister Modi even termed the phrase environmental justice. So you may look it up and see how it takes shape. But that is a word which he has given to the conference. And his point, which is worth keeping in mind, is he says that the energy of all humankind, right? I mean, the energy that all humankind consumes in an entire year is the same as what the sun gives to the earth in 1 hour. Even I didn't know this when Murthy sir asked me to just have some points for this discussion, and I read up. What I found is Prime Minister Modi has used this sentence. He says the energy used by all humankind is available from the sun in 1 hour. Now, so where is the challenge? The challenge is this is not available 24/7 by 365. First of all, sunlight is available in a majority of the countries, anything from 10 to 12 hours. Okay, but in some countries it may be even less. Secondly, seasonally also, when it is winter or when it is monsoon, again the amount of sunlight available is less. Yet, if you look at that simple point, that the sun gives us in 1 hour what we consume in an entire year. And this is all countries, all humankind. So we must find a way to harness this potential, and that is one of the other aims of COP26. And we must give credit to our Prime Minister to come up with brilliant ideas like one sun, one world, one grid. So today the plan is, how do we capture solar energy, find ways to store it cost effectively, and then make it available, and not just for ourselves. So when we are looking at one grid, what they're trying to say is countries can be connected through this grid, so that if one country is getting sunlight at some other time, the country that is getting sunlight can take energy and share some of it with the other countries. And this can be a kind of trade. Actually, it will become another medium of trade, and therefore it makes business sense also. So this is another important point that he has said. As far as targets go, different countries have given different targets. As Murthy sir mentioned, India has promised to cut its emission to net zero by 2070. Okay, and then different countries would be giving different dates. Yet the challenge has always been, when you start measuring, how much of that actually gets achieved. So the focus is going to be on that in subsequent COP meetings. Within the country, a lot of enlightened companies like the Tatas, the Ambanis, the Mittals, Ambuja Cement, JSW Steel, they have all signed a joint declaration to reduce carbon emissions in phases. The point is, we have made a good beginning. IRCTC, which is one of the biggest public sector undertakings, has claimed to become net zero by 2030. They have put a date to it, right? So let's see how it goes. So these are some few points which you should know. The COP actually is under the framework known as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and you'll often see the abbreviation UNFCCC. Okay, so these are some points which you can keep in mind with regard to answering some questions, but I thought I'll highlight some points that might be useful to you. So is that fine? Any query on that? Anything you want to know a little more? I don't know whether I can answer it immediately, but if you have some specific question, 2 seconds. Go ahead. Murthy sir, anything else required here?
Sir, exactly how they gonna achieve this carbon neutral kind of limits?
That is actually a mix of so many initiatives. Now look at the initiative by some companies to go green. No, you will see, you must be seeing solar panels are going up almost everywhere that it is cost effective. The government is giving subsidies. So tapping solar energy and reducing traditional electricity itself means you will be burning less fossil fuels, whatever that is, you know.
Yes, sir.
Even your vehicles are going to become electric. So already there is a strong thrust, and the people are also showing a lot of interest in EVs. This was not something unknown; it was known. It's just that it was not cost effective. This is where technology is stepping in and lending a strong support. So materials of construction, especially those related to the manufacture of solar photovoltaic cells, the ability to capture solar energy efficiently, the ability to store them, right? These areas are now getting a lot of investment and importance. When this happens, automatically the consumption of fossil fuels will come down. In other areas also, chemical processing industries, which emit other greenhouse gases, they are also putting in place measures like catalytic converters and changes in process technology to ensure that emissions are brought down. To the best of my knowledge, majority of other industries which are not directly using fossil fuels, in those kind of processes, a majority of them are already operating at the inside the maximum limit laid down by the environmental protection agencies of the respective countries. Every country has an environment protection agency. They lay down the standards of emissions, and I think a majority of the because today even in India, say Maharashtra, MPCB will immediately ask you to shut down if if your emissions are crossing a limit. And they do this by sending vans to these kind of places. Mobile vans are sent, they have monitoring equipment, they will monitor. So it's a third party monitored standard or yardstick, and they will immediately give you orders to shut down. First you get a show cause notice that you explain why it is coming high. This is emitted only by your company, okay? Or it could be a cluster of companies, so they give show cause notices, and then companies can look inside their processes and can understand from where it has actually gone up. But these days companies are also very alert. They don't allow it to reach that stage. When I used to work in one of these companies, this is about 25 years back, yes, we had incidents of unexpected emissions, process control going bad. It was affecting the population nearby. I know instances where I had to rush in the middle of the night to investigate such matters. As I said, I was managing environment for that company, so I had to rush, and then we have to answer to the police, we have to answer to the pollution control board. Sometimes it becomes a question even in the parliament, so it can go as high as that. But because of all these pressures, efforts are on, and this is how they are planning to bring down the fossil fuels. Is that fine? Does it give you some idea?
Yes, sir, I got it. Energy mix can be one of the best
Yes.
thing that we can go
And-
through to achieve this.
Correct. So solar energy, wind
Wind
energy,
energy,
these are
yes,
being tapped heavily, and now green energy from based on hydrogen. So this is
hydrogen.
an emerging area. All these used to be costly. We didn't have processes and materials to do it cost effective. That was the only limitation. And with that, getting taken care of or getting some support, things will become better. That is what is expected, and it will improve. There is no doubt. In the last 25 years, it has improved. It will continue to improve. The pace at which it is improved, it will improve, is not something that we can say with any guarantee. But the fact that it is improving itself is a blessing. So that's the way we can look at it at the moment, right? That's
Yes,
how
sir.
things are. I will switch to my presentation now because I'm already running short on time. I may have to hurry through that. Just let me know whether you are able to see it well enough. I will just make it a little bigger. Okay, so is this visible properly to you?
Yes, yes, we can see that.
Okay, so don't worry about the topic. I will try to cover robotics, and RPA. Essentially, we are touching only the tip of the iceberg, but it's more to make you aware of the concept and to bring you close to reality as it is existing today. What is happening in different areas, how the different domains are getting benefited, right? This is also one field that is growing rapidly. Okay, so in technology, anything that is good is bound to grow fast if the hurdles are not there. For example, knowledge of solar energy was there even 20 years back. Okay, but we didn't have cost effective methods. Whereas in robotics and robots, we were not so unfortunate. So the developments are taking place at a very fast pace. The word robot itself is almost exactly 100-year old. If you see the historical background, it was coined by Czechoslovakian dramatist Karel Čapek. There was a drama in which he used this word robo, which actually means labor. Okay, and in 1942, so after about 20 years, Isaac Asimov, who is a very prolific writer, right, and his novels use robos, right, based on this concept of the Czechoslovakian dramatist. His novels use robots, and he studied them so much, and he was fascinated by robots so much that he actually made 3 laws, which we will just take a look quickly. And in 1956, the real attention of industry got drawn towards robot when George Devol and Joseph Engelberger, they established the first robo company. Actually, they took a page out of Asimov's book. Actually, they were reading those books, and then it gave them this idea that can't we do something real? Because until that time, it was only in books. It was just a imagination. They wanted to bring reality to that imagination, and they actually worked on developing something that could be used in industry. And that's how in 1959 you have the first mechanical device that could do some work which was being done by humans. That was Unimate. It was the first robo prototype developed in 1959. George Devol, especially Engelberger, was actually a real industrialist. Devol was a research person, and I think both were engineers. And so they developed this, and afterwards they discussed this with the management of General Motors. And in 1961, they actually installed Unimate at their New Jersey plant. Right? It was actually doing just a lift and shift operation. You can see that picture of that robot just to get an idea what it looked like. In 2000, Honda created Asimo. They gave the name Asimo just as a tribute to Isaac Asimov, right? But Asimo also it's actually an abbreviation. We don't need to go into that. But humanoid, that's why I put this here. You can say the first humanoid means a robot that looked like a human being, right, came up in 2000. And that also they've put in a lot of time to do research to create that kind of a robot, right? And in 2018, humanoids, this is in India more, like in India, US, after 2000, Honda started using these robots in some places. And actually they retired this. They stopped that project in 2018, right? Because by that time, they felt that now we want to focus more on robots that will create more value. They had this Asimo doing a lot of odd jobs, working more or less like an office assistant, helping people in departmental stores, and even just for pure entertainment at home. These were actually available in the market. Okay. And in 2018, in India also, we started using humanoids. HDFC Bank, probably in Bangalore and Mumbai, tried this out. I don't know if any of you have visited one of these branches, but you might see it roaming around in their office premises and trying to help people with basic information, and even sometimes some forms and procedures that people have to follow for certain tasks. So this is the picture of the Unimate. Okay, essentially it was just picking up ingots from place of manufacture and putting it in another assembly line for it to be used elsewhere. But it was there. So this was the first robo, and it was called the Unimate, right? This is Asimo. This is what Asimo looked like by the time it was retired in 2018. Retired means they stopped manufacturing, they stopped work on Asimo, and this is what it looked like towards the towards 2018, when it was very popular. It was very popular in many places in Japan, and now they are focusing attention on other areas where robots can be useful. Okay, this is the robotic assistant. It is named ERA. It's supposed to be a female. IRA actually stands for Intelligent Robotic Assistant at HDFC. Okay, and this is exactly what it looked like. It had most of the robots have a screen in front, so that when something can't be done verbally, you can do it by typing it in, right? So this is just to give you an idea.
Sorry, sir.
Yes, please.
Sorry to interrupt. The slide is not changing, sir. We can see the first slide only.
Oh my God, let me just see what's happening. All right, let me see.
Sir, now we can
you
see ERA.
now? Okay, man, I'll stick to this screen then, because I was in full screen. Maybe that created some difficulty. But if you've not seen the slide, so this is the Unimate. You saw this slide of the historical background?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Unimate. This is Honda's Asimo. This is the ERA robotic assistant, which HDFC tried out. Okay, we'll see some more information about such robots in use elsewhere. So then we just look at what is robotics. This is you can call it some kind of engineering, but essentially it is an interdisciplinary branch. In fact, I think even the branch of engineering called mechatronics is connected with robotics, or maybe it is an offshoot of robotics. Once robots became very popular, I think mechatronics was introduced just about 7 or 10 years back, right? And robots were already on the scene before that. And maybe this branch of mechatronics is one that has a lot of other branches involved in that, like computer science, electrical, electronics. So that is mechatronics. But robotics is again an interdisciplinary branch of computer science and engineering. It's actually a meeting point of both. You can say it goes beyond that. You can say even physics, material of construction, or chemistry. So there is nothing like any boundary that this subject or this area only supports robotics. No, robotics is like a universal thing which requires the experts from different disciplines depending on the application that you have in mind. And when we go ahead, we'll see what I mean by that. So robotics actually involves design, construction, operation, and the use of robots, right? The goal is to design machines that can help and assist humans. The application of robotics have been growing day by day, and you can say that robots are working tirelessly in different domains, and we'll see a list of those domains. And they have led to, as obvious, they have led to a lot of savings for organizations, besides enhancing the productivity of people and the efficiency of use of raw materials. So that is why robotics is very important. The three laws that actually were laid down by Isaac Asimov are very simple. If you read them, you'll realize that it's just plain common sense. And basically, to a large extent, this is still followed, though not stated explicitly. It is still followed when you design robots. But today, the design of robots itself has undergone so many changes that you might bend some rule here and there. So the first law says a robot may not injure a human being, or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. See how well these laws have been framed. The second law says the robot must obey orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. So you can't ask a robot to shoot and kill another human being. That is what actually the second law says. But now in practice, this law may not be followed at all places. Okay, and because robots are finding extensive use in warfare also. Okay, the third law says that the robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So you see, the second law says there should not be conflict with the first law, and the third law says that there should not be conflict with the first or second law. So it actually covers almost the entire picture, and the core issue being don't harm human beings, don't do anything by which human beings will be harmed, and protect human beings if they are likely to be harmed. So this is a common sense point as such you can see. And as I said, some of these rules are getting bent today, but the large number of applications still kind of keep this in mind when designing robots. Okay, so what's a robot? You can call it a robot or a robo. I mean, that's not very important. What you should understand is what it can do. So a robot is a programmable machine capable of carrying out a complex series of actions automatically. You will see all of these in action when we go further ahead with the presentation, right? A robot can be guided by external control device. Okay, this is what happens when robotic surgery is carried out. All right, the doctor has to sit somewhere on a console, and he is given certain electronic interfaces through which he can actually carry out an operation using a robot. We'll see some of those names further down. But an external control device, one of the best examples is surgical robots, or the control may be embedded within. So when you see car manufacturing where there is no human being around, right, then the entire sequence of tasks that the robot has to carry out is pre-programmed and embedded inside the robot, and that's how it can work. It can execute specific tasks with little or no human intervention, and that too with speed and precision, which is its real strength. The real strength and reason why robots are so popular is because they can work with precision and speed. Robot can take the form of a pure software also. This is important to understand. See, when the word robo is mentioned, the first thing that comes to your mind is something like what you see in the movie Transformers. I'm sure you have seen one episode or one of the movies from the series on Transformers or the Terminator.
Yes, sir.
Sure, right? So that is the kind of image that comes to your mind. But in reality, robots need not be, heavy duty, mechanical, humanoid kind of figures. They can be simple, pure software. Of course, they can be heavy duty machines, as you would see in a automobile assembly line, or they can look nearly like human, as we saw in the case of Asimov or Era. Okay, so a robot can be anything. That's something which you should keep in mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and fine. Now there is a new word that's come up. That's called a kobo. A kobo is nothing but it's a robot only, except that it is specifically designed to work alongside human beings. That means it will try to help human beings, and they are called kobos because they are specifically designed to do only some of the tasks of a complete task. The remaining tasks are done by human being. And another very important point is it is specially designed to ensure that it does not harm human beings working around it. So it has special sensors. It will stop if even by mistake a human being comes in the way, or a hand or a leg or something, body part comes in the way of its work, it will just stop working. But the focus is to work with human beings, and it has tremendous advantages. Okay, it has tremendous advantages because I'll show you an example very shortly. Because they ensure that heavy duty work is done by the robot, and fine tuning or finer work is done by human beings. Okay, not that robots can't do, but in some situations it helps. Or if you want to reduce the cost of the entire operation to some extent, then also cobots can be very useful. And in contrast with the traditional industrial robot, where robots are isolated from human contact, cobots actually work with human beings side by side. Of course, that they are cost effective, safe, flexible to deploy. These are some additional plus points. But let's look at a picture of a cobo. So this is the cobo, right? It is actually a flexible arm which can do different things like lifting, shifting, tightening, screws, bolts, or opening screws, bolts. They can even be useful in exactly placing a component in very sensitive areas. Now you see you have a lady working here. This assembly line is actually at Bajaj's two-wheeler factory in Chakan. Okay, and if you, there is an article on that, or there may be more than one article. If you read what they wanted was, this used to be a mixed area. That means men and women used to work on this assembly line. So sometimes it made women feel a little uncomfortable. Okay, plus the women could not do all the heavy lifting and shifting. Because of that, they had to bring in some men. To now overcome this limitation, Bajaj felt that we should bring in this cobos. So they did that, and now this is an all-women assembly line, and women are very happy working, and they get all the help that they actually need from the cobos. So that is how these cobos have been put to use, not only here, in many other places. For example, take this one. This is a cobo that is used in Texas Medical Center. This is a wonderful assistant because it can shift specimens from operations theater to the lab, or it can bring reports from the lab to the theater, or it can reports of course come even through the computer network, but bringing certain equipment. And it also helps in dispensing medicines to patients, bringing food for patients, and it has played a vital role in COVID times. Because now, if you recall, there were special wards for COVID, and healthcare workers also were scared of going into those wards because they have to wear so much of protective equipment, and still there was no guarantee that nothing will happen to them. There, these kind of robots have proved very useful. I remember reading in India, even in Meerut, some student engineers designed a robot which helped in the hospital to handle COVID cases. So this is also an example of a cobo because it is working along with human beings. Okay, so that is the key issue here. And other domains that use robots, yes, and this list will keep growing. Okay, this is just a sample list. Manufacturing is among the top, and because the first robots were used in automobile manufacturing, because automobile manufacturing has a standardized assembly line, right? So the largest number of robots until recently were in use in manufacturing, and within manufacturing the automobile industry was one of the biggest consumers of robots, right? Now it is also finding use in healthcare, specifically in surgery. So there are 2-3 robots which are very popular. One of the oldest is called the Da Vinci, named after the famous artist. So Da Vinci can carry out different types of surgeries, prostate, cancers, kidney, those kind of operations. But there are other robots specifically designed for, say, knee replacement. So there is a company or a robot called Mako, Mako. There is another robot called Renaissance, which is having expertise in spine repair. So if you have spinal injuries, then this robot can handle those kind of operations and surgeries quite well. The main advantage being the size of the incision can be small, the bleeding is less, the placement of any accessories is precise. The tools can be used with a greater degree of freedom. See, a robotic hand can move up, down, left, right. It has 360-degree movement in all three coordinates, and that itself is a big plus point. That's what the doctors say. So robots are it is now increasing in use even in India. I don't know whether you have heard of it, but in knee surgery, it is a standard practice. But the last I read was Apollo Hospital now has a Institute of Robotic Surgery, and they use the Da Vinci, and they also use the other robots. But they now have an Institute of Robotic Surgery where they are training more and more doctors to do surgery using robots. So this area is growing. Robots in farming, I mean, you may not find it extensively done in India, but when you have large farmlands like in the United States or some other countries, but there are n number of videos, even like apple orchards or any kind of fruit orchards. If you want to just take off the fruit, right? There are mechanized equipment, whether it is for cutting the crop like rice, wheat, all those kind of crops. Not only just cutting them, but cutting and all the way, all the steps up to getting the grain, that can be done by robots. And it is far more faster and less labor intensive. Of course, that has its own negative impact, which we'll be seeing, right? So I think sometime back Murthy sir had sent a link to IoT devices which help in understanding whether your fruit is properly ripe or not. Now don't be surprised tomorrow that will be combined with robots that can, especially in the case of costly fruits, where you want to be sure that you don't pluck the fruit until it is ready for plucking or properly matured. So you could combine an IoT with a robot and do that. But in farming also, it's playing a big role. Many greenhouses can be operated using robots, because all that you need to do there is get the plants up and then maintain conditions. So robots are well suited to tending to greenhouse plants, whatever they are. Robots used in military is again something that is a big area. I don't want to go into details, but I would request you to read up on one particular instance that happened in November 2020. Some of you might have read. Before that, there was the killing of General Suleiman in Iraq. In Iran. Have you heard of General Suleiman's assassination in Iran? Okay, if you have not heard, there is one more nuclear scientist. His name was Mohsin Fakhrizadeh. But just look up these names. Nuclear scientist killed in Iran in 2020, and just read that article. The way in which they have used robots to identify and shoot that particular scientist in a convoy of 5 or 7 cars is something which you will really appreciate, how robots can be put to use in military. Of course, simple things like drones and all could be used, but drones are visible. They use techniques where nobody could make out, and that robot was actually a gun, right? And that gun self-destructed itself after the operation was over. The operation was successful. And initially, the Iran military or the security guards traveling with him, they didn't even understand how did he die, who shot him. But it took quite a few days and looking around that terrain, and then they found pieces of this gun that was used. It was mounted on a vehicle. But it's a very interesting, and you don't be surprised, you might get even a movie afterwards, right? So robots in military is again something that's being used very, very widely. All right. And the assassination was carried out by a sniper who was more than 1,000 miles away from that site. So you can imagine what kind of technology they had put to work. Robots in hazardous work areas, again, like nuclear power plants or hazardous chemical process plants. If there is a leakage and you want it to be attended, you could think of robots. In the military, they use it to diffuse IED devices. Okay, it can also be used to sniff out explosives hidden. So these are also places where robots are now getting used extensively. Another very, very critical example, or which I'll show you a picture now, is robots in space exploration. If you recall, NASA just landed a rover on Mars, and you should just look at that rover and what it does, and you will get some idea about how it's one of the most sophisticated robots that you will come across. Okay. And you should try to look up some of the videos and understand what it does, and then think how it would have been designed, right? The whole of mechatronics, the whole of robotics, anything in that subject, I think all of them have a physics, chemistry, everything, every branch of science and engineering has been put to use in assembling that or in creating that robot. We'll look at a picture of that. This is to the traditional and the most extensive use of robots is in automobile manufacture, right? And here you can see it. This is a Hyundai plant in Sri Perumbudur. It produces a car every 30 seconds. Can you imagine that? Hyundai producing a car every 30 seconds. They use 580 robots at this facility or at this plant. Okay, you have another similar example in Swift, in the manufacture of Swift Desire by Maruti. They have a plant in Manesar, I think that's in Gujarat. But I think overall, Maruti uses more than 5,000 robots. You can see that this area is completely cordoned off. Only robots do the work. There are no human beings anywhere around. Okay, so this is completely pre-programmed, right? So these are not cobots. Cobots would have people working around them, right? And this is the slide which I was talking about. This is the Mars rover 2020 called Perseverance, which is actually currently on Mars and doing wide range of experiments. Just look at its components. Okay, you have a laser micro image. It's like a super cam. It takes pictures as wherever it is directed to take. And of course, all of this is controlled from the control center in NASA, right? Some of it might be pre-programmed, I'm not sure, but look at the components, right? It can take pictures of high resolution of any area from any direction. It has a weather station to monitor temperatures, wind speeds, whatever. And it has different types of spectrometers to do analysis of gases or solids, because it will do some excavation from a depth and then look at the soil. So you need different types of spectrometers to monitor the ambient air quality, or there is no air there, but whatever is the environment above ground. If you want to monitor what gases are there, what kind of chemicals are there, you need one type of spectrophotometer. And in the case of soil, you may need another kind. So you have that. It has a subsurface radar just to keep watching, where are the what do you call obstructions, so that it will go around such obstructions and hurdles or pits or whatever, right? It even has a mini chemical plant. It produces oxygen from Martian CO2. Maybe this is an experiment which will be a prelude to sending human beings to the to Mars, because you need oxygen, and maybe if you can't manufacture it through your normal means, there is no air there, so it seems that there is a lot of CO2, and from that CO2 you can produce oxygen. So look at the thinking of the team that designed this rover. This is one of the best examples of a sophisticated robot in use today, right? Just for your information, the temperature on Mars can be anything from plus 20 degrees to minus 163 degrees. To operate in such a wide temperature range, you need material of construction, you need equipment that is designed to handle these kind of extreme conditions. And this is something which we should be proud of as a humankind, because this will, again, most of the technologies that are used by military today are used for human beings in the near future. So maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line, something from this will be useful to all of us too. They spend millions of dollars behind the research. Okay, so just to give you a sample, this is the list of tasks handled by robots in the automotive industry. Anybody who is a mechanical engineer will understand each of these tasks well, but it's just like you get a sheet, and from sheet you start with stamping, then you assemble the parts, then you do welding where required, then you paint the body and everything that needs to be painted, and then you have to put some parts, even which may require special machining and all. That is done by CNC machines. This is again done in parallel on the side. And then you have the other very critical operation of moving, the car at different stages. It has to go from one stage to another. So every time lifting, shifting, and then finally storing. So all of this can be done by robots. Even the finishing, like the final polishing, trimming, buffing, polishing, that is all done by robots. So these are typical tasks done in the automobile industry. But let's look at a wider range of applications. So in the hospitality and healthcare, right, it is now finding a lot of use, so much so that today there is a hotel in Japan in a place called Nagasaki. So do you have any other reason for knowing the name Nagasaki? Do you know what Nagasaki is popular for? I think you should be knowing this. Nagasaki is one of the two places where the first two atomic bombs were dropped by the US. Right? That's Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These were the two cities at that time where atomic bombs were dropped. Right? But today in Nagasaki, there is a hotel called Henna Hotel, which is the first hotel in the world to be entirely staffed by robots. From the moment you reach the reception, right, everything is handled by robots. Don't ask me about what happens in the restaurant. Maybe they have a chef also who is a robot. There are robo chefs who make certain dishes, but that's extending it a bit too far. But the base administrative aspects of running a hotel, that's completely right down to the billing, right, is done by robots. So they have this hotel which is completely manned by robots. There's also this robot called Connie, which is used by Hotel Hilton. This is developed by IBM, and it works like the first point of contact when guests walk into Hilton. Then it will talk to them. It will try to ask them if they want to know something or help them to go about, okay, what is your room. There are other cobots which are there in hotels today, which can be used to carry your luggage. You just put it on that box and then it will carry it. It will accompany you right up to your room, right? So now no bellboy will come with you with luggage, right? This robo will come and it will take you exactly. So you don't even have to search for the room. It will take you exactly to the room. You just open it. It will come inside and you take off the bag. So that kind of robots are also there in the hospitality industry. I already mentioned the remaining 3-4 examples are from the healthcare industry. So you have already seen telemedicine, right? So and the remote patient monitoring, we talked about that when we were looking at IoT, right? So the Da Vinci system, the Mako system, these are all special surgical robots, right? And there are service robots that we saw those cobots which help healthcare workers to remain safe. They help in transporting supplies, linens, food, and also work in areas which are having high risk of pathogens, right? Even cleaning and disinfection of certain items within the hospitals is done by robots. You have in India, we had, as I said, in HDFC Bank, this was deployed in 2018, the IRA ERA. Now it is ERA 2. It started with ERA 1. Mitra is again another indigenously built humanoid, and that can interact with humans. This can be found in Canara Bank and PVR Cinemas in Bangalore. So these are all robots developed by Indian startups or Indian companies. There is also a female robot called Shalu, which is developed by Dinesh Patel, who hails from a very small village in UP. Yeah, and he is a computer teacher in Kendriya Vidyalaya, IIT Mumbai. He made this robo, right? And Indians, are very good at jugaad. So there are robots made completely with indigenous material. So he made this robo, and that can speak 47 languages, of which 9 are Indian. Okay, and therefore it can be used. It is very useful as a teacher, as a quiz master, as a receptionist, or assistant to the elderly. This is again another area where robots are being used widely. Robots in Japan are also used as pets. Robots in European countries are also used as toys by children. But robots can also be put to use, and they are being put to use they are put along with elderly people, and any kind of heavy lifting, shifting, or if they need something, they can just give a command to the robot and it will fetch it, right? And therefore, Shalu is supposed to be a good learning companion for students, right? One of the very bizarre application of robots was a party called IMKK, India Makal Munetra Karchi, right? They have used a robot called Doozy, whose job is to interact with people who come for various meetings. Okay, they were first, I think, used in the April 2021 assembly elections in Tamil Nadu, and they are now it is expected to play a further role in the 2022 assembly elections. But the point is, robots can help in elections, and in COVID times, this can be a big plus point, because that will go and do first level information sharing with people who want to know something. For all that you know, tomorrow the politician's speech also might be made by a robot. You don't know what it can do, right? But this is just for your information. You can look it up. It is there. It is in India. Now we look at robotic process automation. This is another fantastic area where the knowledge of robotics has been applied in one of the best possible ways, right? This is a form of business process automation technology which is tailored to carry out tasks normally performed by humans. These robots are capable of mimicking many, means they can almost do every action that human beings can do except think, right? Think is not an action, but every physical action that a human being can do, these robots can do. They can log, and now here you see they can log into applications, move files, copy and paste data, extract information from structured and semi-structured data like documents, emails. They can even scrape browsers and more, right? So this can be called an RPA bot. So your chat bot is again an example of an RPA bot. So there are many sites you would have seen, you know, whether it's ICICI Bank, or I think many big companies have chat bots, and they are nothing but actually RPA bots that can free employees from highly repetitive manual tasks and focus on innovation. So they are actually created to handle standard FAQs. Okay, so just to give you an idea, the market for RPA, that means application of robotic process automation, is growing annually at 29%, and by 2023 it's supposed to touch, you know, this is market size in US millions of dollars, 2,700 million US dollars. That's the market size expected to be in 2023. Okay, so then just because you might not have heard of this word scraping a browser, so I thought let me just give you some idea, and that gives you some idea about what these kind of RPA bots can do. It can open a browser, it can stop all the distracting user interface elements, it can scroll down and load dynamic content, and it can collect the latest tweets. Say for example, by Twitter, maybe tomorrow you will have, you know, they can extract information from Facebook, they can extract information from Instagram. You just have to program it properly. It can be done, right? But here the example given is Twitter. So it can create a directory using the name of the Twitter user and store the text content of each tweet, right, of the particular user in separate files, and even store a screenshot as proof that this is the place, this is the screen from which this information was extracted. Now this is becoming very crucial, because you see a lot of defamation suits are being filed when people have made certain controversial Twitter comments. You know, it's creating a lot of problems. The other big area is fake news. So it can help to identify what was the source of fake news. So these are some new areas in which RPA bots are getting used. Why use? They are very obvious. The first and most important is automate repetitive tasks. Then it reduces time, improves productivity. Essentially, it is, you know, making it cost effective, and so much that you cannot think that it can be done by any means other than robots. So what robots can do in terms of making operations cost effective, right now there is no better alternative. Okay, so it also reduces human error. so you can get less accidents. That makes the work area much safer. Okay, you can even use it to create new automation. So in RPA bots, you can create more bots for more such activities. You can even do something similar in manufacturing. If you have brought, like Bajaj has brought, cobots, they can slowly move into robots and full automation, right? So when they want to test it out, you can again use these kind of RPA prototypes to check whether this will work in another area, right? So the steps, of course, see, the automation part is the glamorous part, but what goes on behind the scenes is something which you have to be very, very careful. It is time consuming, meticulous, requires a lot of knowledge. This is where the real interdisciplinary skills, the contribution of their skills comes into picture. So you have to first identify a task that you want to automate, and then understand, you have to break it down into the smallest possible subtasks. And then for each subtask, you need full details, whether it is the physical, the chemical, the information technology side, data, all aspects have to be examined. And then you build a business case, then you design a prototype and give a proof of concept by testing those prototypes, and then you make modifications and changes till you come to a design which you feel now it will work smoothly, and then you start actual manufacture of that robot, right? And the benefits, again, there are many. We have already seen some of them. You can look at this at your convenience. I just want to highlight some points here. These are some survey results, and this is also equally important for you as managers. So I want to just tell you that among global executives, 63% say RPA is a major component in digital transformation. So this is the good part. Okay, 57% say RPA improves employee engagement and reduces manual errors. So that is also a good point. 92% agree RPA has met or exceeded expectations for better compliance, right? 68% of the global workers believe automation will make them more productive. Means they themselves will become more productive, essentially because it frees up employees for more creative work, thinking, modifications, improvements. And that is what makes even employees happy. Okay, and so that is that 60% executives agree that it enables people to focus on more strategic work, right? There are downsides also. Forrester Research has estimated, this was in 2018, that RPA software will threaten the livelihood of 230 million or more knowledge workers, or approximately 9% of the global workforce. Right? And this is something which everybody needs to sit up and think about. According to Gartner, by 2020, automation and AI will reduce employee requirements in business shared service centers, right, by 65%. Now, these are some startling facts done with a careful survey. So they must be taken seriously when you become managers, and or you will be affected by these kind of situations. You must know what is happening and why, right? And I'm sure people are thinking about how to mitigate this risk. One of the ways is to change the skill set of the people so that they can actually be put to use again. Right? Mostly manual type of work, repetitive work, monotonous work. Those kind of are what we call pen pushers in organizations, right? They are going to be in trouble. They will no longer be. Even in software development, RPA bots can do base level software coding without any intervention of human beings. That is also possible. Those kind of tools are available. So in David Katsky from Deloitte points to a bank experience where they implemented RPA. So what they found, the bank redesigned its claims process by deploying 85 bots to run 30 processes, handling 1.5 million requests per year. The bank added capacity equivalent to 200 full-time employees at approximately 30% of the cost of recruiting their staff. So you can imagine the kind of benefit businesses are getting, but the kind of hit employees will be taking. right? So this is a real life example. Robotic process automation tools are great at automating routine rules-based tasks. So when you want to check the credit worthiness of a person, you have to apply some rules and you get a proper and a clear answer, right? But RPA isn't actually a robot; it's a software script that is programmed by people, okay, to execute instructions that are narrow in scope. So you might have found, when you're asking questions to some of these chatbots, you'll be surprised at the kind of answers that you get, and sometimes they can pick off customers. So one has to be very careful before you deploy RPA bot, right? Because if it is not properly designed, if it is not having a large number of questions that people generally ask, it would throw out answers which will put off customers, and that can cause severe customer dissatisfaction, right? And there is a security risk. Now, hackers can infiltrate the RPA bots or the chat bots. Now, the information passing to and fro between the company's chatbot and the user can also be sensitive, and this can leak. So you have to keep this in mind while designing RPA bots. So this is about robots and services. Yes, we have seen all of this in sports. I would like to mention, you might have heard that the best grandmasters in chess have been beaten by a computer. Today, the world champion in Go, which is supposed to be a very popular sport in many countries, especially China, and it's supposed to be a game that is very closely related to neural networks, right? Even their company has designed a software which can play with any expert, and all the experts have been defeated. And now this can be very useful in training. So if you want to become good at sports, you just play games against this robot or this software. This is a software robot, right? And you can hone your skills. But you might have seen there are robots that can play table tennis. There are robots that can play tennis also. Okay, so you can excel in many sports by playing with a worthy opponent. That opponent is unlikely to make any mistake. So that's where the challenge is. In entertainment, there is no end. All the VFX, all the visual special effects, they are coming with the help of like robots. You have seen Transformers, you have seen Terminator. You can see what impact it is having on this. In future, you can see them in construction. You don't be surprised, you'll see them in malls. You'll be seeing them in departmental stores. Currently, they are working on handling forest fires. They are also working on more accurate medical diagnosis, providing quick legal services, especially references to past cases, right? And standard kind of documents it can print out. You just give all the details and it will print out a will without any problem. It can print out other standard legal documents, succession certificate or a will and things like that. But where judges find it very useful, they have quick access to past judgments on similar cases. You might see some videos. I'll just look them up. You may not need firemen. See, when the World Trade Center happened, or when many other big fires have happened, especially in high-rise buildings, firemen get killed, or they meet with accident. This may become a thing of the past if you can put robots you use for firefighting, right? And the latest is cyber war. So you might have been reading about NSO and Pegasus and shutting down of nuclear plants, shutting down of the entire power grid. All these things have actually happened. These make use of RPA bots, hacking plus RPA bots. So this is where robots are today. These are some of the companies. On this side, you have most of them are inside the US. These are all outside the US, right? And all of them are well-known companies. Whenever you see robots, you are likely to be seeing these names, right? And so this is just to give you an idea. And now open source, like you have Linux, right? There is going to be a open source project called the ROS Consortium, which will build a robot operating system. So operating system specifically for robots and linked to manufacturing. All these companies, you can see they have joined hands form a consortium and are supporting development of a new operating system specifically for robots to be used in manufacturing. Now you can see that this is a big thing and it is going to give you great results. So I think these are some of the points that I wanted to cover. I hope it was interesting and opens your eyes to new possibilities that exist in this field of robotics and RPA. So that's about all I have. Any questions?
Very good.
So